Growing up, my brother and I shared a bond that was both typical and strange. We fought over the remote, teased each other relentlessly, and conspired together against our parents. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken understanding that made our relationship unique. We were each other's confidants and partners in crime, navigating the complexities of adolescence side by side. One summer afternoon, the air thick with humidity, I found myself in the shower, the water cascading down my back, steam enveloping me like a cozy blanket. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in thought and let the world outside fade away. I was deep in contemplation, reflecting on everything from school pressures to the latest crush I had developed. As I lathered shampoo into my hair, the peaceful silence was suddenly interrupted by a loud knock on the bathroom door. "Hey, are you almost done?" My brother called out, impatience dripping from his voice. I had forgotten about his need to use the bathroom, something I would usually accommodate. Today, though, I was lost in my own world. "Just a minute!" I shouted back, trying to sound more annoyed than I felt. But a part of me was entertained by his urgency. We both knew the bathroom was a shared space, yet it had become an unwritten rule that I often took longer than necessary. I could hear him pacing outside, tapping his foot against the floor. When I finally rinsed off and stepped out of the shower, I wrapped a towel around myself and opened the door. My brother stood there, arms crossed, an eyebrow raised. "You've been in there forever. What were you doing, rehearsing for a musical?" he teased. I rolled my eyes, but a smile crept onto my face. "Maybe I was just enjoying some peace and quiet," I shot back. It was a typical sibling exchange filled with lighthearted sarcasm. Little did we know that moment would set the stage for an unexpected twist in our relationship. As I moved past him to grab my clothes, I caught a glimpse of something in his expression. A flicker of something deeper, something that made my heart race slightly. Was it curiosity? Concern? I shrugged it off, thinking it was just the remnants of the steam from the shower playing tricks on me. But in that brief moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to our connection than I had previously acknowledged. A thought nagged at me as I dressed in my room, the lingering sensation of his gaze still fresh in my mind. What if our bond was destined for something beyond just brotherly love? I pushed the idea aside, determined to focus on the usual sibling banter that filled our days. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, the air grew heavier with unspoken words. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but replay the day's events in my mind. My brother's face, the way he looked at me after I stepped out of the shower, haunted my thoughts. I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted, and I was both curious and terrified of what that could mean. The days that followed that summer afternoon felt different. There was a palpable tension hanging between my brother and me, an undercurrent that pulsed beneath our typical sibling banter. Every time our eyes met, there was a momentary flicker of something unsaid, something that hung in the air like a fragile balloon, ready to pop with the slightest provocation. We still engaged in our usual antics, but there were moments when our conversations drifted into deeper territory. Questions about dreams, fears, and our futures. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight, my brother turned to me with a serious expression. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. "Like after high school and all that?" I considered his question, the weight of it pressing down on me. "Yeah, sometimes. It's kind of scary, right? Everything feels so uncertain." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I feel like we've been so close for so long, but I wonder if that changes when we go our separate ways." His words struck a chord within me. I hadn't really allowed myself to think about how life might change as we grew older. I also sensed that this wasn't just about the future. It was about us, our relationship, and the possibility of drifting apart. "Maybe we can figure it out together," I suggested, trying to keep the conversation light. But it was clear my brother was searching for something more profound. "You know, keep the connection strong no matter what happens." He turned to me, and for a moment, the air between us was electric. "Yeah, I want that too." There was a vulnerability in his voice that sent a shiver down my spine. As summer wore on, we began spending more time together, seeking solace in our shared experiences. We would watch movies late into the night, our laughter echoing through the empty house. But each time we laughed, there was an underlying current of intensity that seemed to deepen our bond, making it harder to ignore the feelings that lurked just beneath the surface. One evening, after a particularly intense movie marathon, I found myself unable to sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the film's dramatic moments in my mind. Then I thought of my brother, his laughter, the way he always seemed to understand me without needing words. I felt a rush of warmth and confusion, a mingling of emotions I didn't quite know how to label. Unable to shake the feeling, I got up and quietly made my way to the living room. I was surprised to find him there, sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him, his eyes glued to the screen as a rerun of our favorite show played in the background. "Can't sleep?" he asked, looking up as I entered. "Yeah, too much on my mind," I admitted, taking a seat next to him. The warmth of his presence felt both comforting and charged. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound being the show's laughter track. Then, breaking the quiet, he said, "You know, I've been thinking about us a lot lately." My heart raced at his words. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual even though my insides were churning. "Just how close we are and how that feels different now. I mean, I'm not sure if it's just me." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "But sometimes it feels like there's more there, you know?" The air thickened around us, and I felt exposed, caught in a moment that could easily slip into something both wonderful and terrifying. "I felt it too," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes widened slightly, and the weight of the unspoken hung between us. We both knew we were on the edge of something significant, a precipice that could lead us in several directions. The realization left me breathless. I was terrified, but undeniably drawn to it. "Maybe we should talk about it more," he suggested, his tone more tentative now. "Yeah," I agreed, my heart racing. "But maybe not right now?" He nodded and we both fell silent again, each lost in our thoughts, the possibilities swirling around us like fireflies in the dark. The tension between my brother and me hung in the air like an unfinished song. Over the next few days, we danced around the subject, our usual banter punctuated by glances that lingered just a moment too long. I could tell we were both thinking about that conversation in the living room, each of us wondering what it meant and where it would lead. One evening, as I was brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse of him in the mirror. He stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of curiosity and hesitation. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but soft. I nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and nerves. We made our way to the porch, the familiar sounds of summer surrounding us, the chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. The night was warm, but an electric charge filled the air between us. We sat on the steps, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel my heart racing, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Finally, my brother broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what we talked about the other night," he began, his voice serious. "Me too," I admitted, my palms slightly sweaty. "It's hard to ignore, isn't it? This connection we have." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I guess I'm just trying to figure out what it means. It feels like we're at a crossroads, and I don't want to mess it up." "Neither do I replied, my heart pounding. "I've never felt this way about anyone, let alone my brother. It's confusing. Right? It's like, I care about you so much. It's beyond just being siblings," he said, his eyes searching mine for understanding. "But I also don't want to complicate things." As he spoke, I felt a rush of warmth and understanding. It was as if we were uncovering layers of our relationship that had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. "I think it's okay to feel this way," I said, trying to encourage him. "We're growing up and our relationships change. It doesn't have to mean we'll lose what we have." He looked thoughtful, nodding slowly. "So what do we do? Do we explore it? Or do we just keep things as they are?" I considered his question carefully. The idea of exploring our connection sent a thrill through me, but the fear of what that might mean loomed large. "Maybe we can just take it one step at a time," I suggested. "We can talk about how we feel and see where it goes. No pressure." "Okay," he said, a hint of relief washing over his face. "That sounds good." As we sat on the porch, our conversation unfolded in a way that felt both freeing and daunting. We shared our thoughts on relationships, love, and the nature of our bond, the boundaries between siblings, and something deeper blurring in a way that felt exhilarating. As the night wore on, I realized how much I valued our honesty. There was a sense of camaraderie that made me feel closer to him than ever. I couldn't deny the rush of affection that surged within me, and I sensed he felt the same. "Just promise me one thing," he said, looking at me earnestly. "If things get weird or uncomfortable, we'll talk about it. I don't want to lose you." "Promise," I replied, a smile creeping onto my face. It was a small agreement, but it felt significant, like we were setting the ground rules for a new chapter in our relationship. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed our conversation in my mind. There was an exhilaration in the uncertainty, a sense that we were on the brink of something new and exciting. Yet, with that thrill came a nagging worry. Would this new dynamic alter the core of our relationship? And could we really navigate the complexities without losing sight of what we had? The days following our conversation felt charged with a new energy. My brother and I began to explore our bond with a sense of curiosity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. We engaged in deeper conversations, shared secrets, and even moments of vulnerability that we had never allowed ourselves to show before. It was as if we were peeling back layers of our lives, revealing parts of ourselves that had been hidden in the shadows. One afternoon, as we sat in the backyard, the sun casting warm rays on our skin, my brother turned to me, his expression more serious than usual. "Do you think we're crossing a line?" he asked, the weight of his question hanging heavily in the air. I paused, considering my response carefully. "I don't know. It feels different, but in a good way. We're just being honest about how we feel." He nodded, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. What if it becomes too complicated? What if we end up hurting each other? His words struck a chord, and I could feel the familiar tension creeping back in. "I get that, but isn't it worth exploring? We can set boundaries. We don't have to rush into anything." "Right," he agreed, his brow furrowing in thought. "But I can't help but worry about what people would think if they knew." The thought had crossed my mind too. Our relationship was unconventional, and the fear of judgment loomed large. "We can keep it between us for now," I said, trying to reassure him. "What matters is how we feel, not what others might think." As the days turned into weeks, we found ourselves drawing closer, the lines between sibling love and something deeper becoming increasingly blurred. We laughed more, confided in each other, and supported one another through the pressures of school and life. Yet, with every shared moment, the weight of unspoken feelings loomed larger. One evening, as we watched the sunset together, a moment of silence enveloped us. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful backdrop for what felt like an important moment. My brother turned to me, his expression earnest. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," I replied, my heart racing. "I think I'm falling for you," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. The world around me fell away as I processed his words. It was both thrilling and terrifying to hear him say it aloud. "I feel the same way," I admitted, the confession tumbling from my lips before I could fully grasp the implications. His eyes widened, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over his face. "Really? I thought I was the only one." "No, you're not," I said, feeling a wave of warmth wash over me. "But I'm scared. What does this mean for us?" He took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "I don't want to lose what we have, but I also don't want to ignore how I feel. I think we need to be honest with ourselves." In that moment, it felt like we were standing on a precipice, looking down into an unknown abyss. The possibilities stretched out before us, both enticing and daunting. "Maybe we can take it slow," I suggested. "Figure out what this means without rushing into anything." He nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Yeah, I like that idea. Let's just be open about it and see where it goes." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in twilight, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We had stepped into uncharted territory, but we were doing it together. It was a leap of faith, one that would require honesty and communication, but I felt ready to embrace the uncertainty. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but smile. The weight of my brother's confession lingered in the air, and I felt a newfound sense of hope. Our bond had evolved into something extraordinary, and while the road ahead might be complicated, it was a journey I was willing to embark on. Whatever lay ahead, I knew we would face it together, navigating the complexities of our relationship with care and understanding. In that moment, I felt a sense of freedom in embracing the unknown, ready to explore the depth of our connection, whatever that might mean.